Welcome to O-Level Physics Online. In this video, I'll be talking about cell and battery. I'll be talking about cell and battery. And by the end of this lesson, you will be able to, one, define cell and battery. The second one, you should be able to state the types of cells that we have. And thirdly, you should be able to differentiate between primary cells and secondary cells. You should be able to differentiate between primary cell and secondary cell. So, according to conservation law of energy, which states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but can be transformed from one state or from one form to another in an isolated system. So, one of the main one of the example of device that we can use for this to confirm or for the explanation of conservation of energy is that of a cell. So a cell is basically a storage device used for the storage of chemical energy and for the transformation of chemical energy into electrical energy. Now, if you look at this place, this is just a common example of a cell, while the second image I'm having here represents the circuit symbol for cell. So that is what we need to note about this one. And that one will lead us to the definition of battery. A battery is defined as a group of two or more cells that are connected together electrically in series. Battery is a group of two or more electrical cells connected together electrically in series. So meaning that before you can form what we refer to as battery, there must be at least two cells that are connected in series before you can call this storage device or this cell a battery, before you can refer to cells as what as battery. And the diagram below just shows the arrangement of it. The positive pole of the first one is connected to the negative pole of the second one. So that is when you can form what we refer to as battery. So from the positive to the negatives, and you can have just 3, 4, 5, and so on, depending on the size of the battery that you are looking for. Now, the second image here represents the circuit symbol for the battery. If you compare this one with the first diagram that I showed, the first one is just a single parallel line, one and the first one and the second one, while this one contains two because I'm having two cells in this case to form the battery. So the longer line represents the positive, while the shorter line represents the negative pole of the battery. Now, what are the types of cells or battery that we have? Basically, there are three types of cells or battery. The first one we have is the primary cells or primary battery. The second one we have is secondary cells or secondary battery, while the third one we have is fuel cells. But for the purpose of your exam, only two of these one are required for you to be aware of when you are preparing for your examination. As such, I will not do much explanation or any explanation on the fuel cell. I will just leave the explanation on my emphasis on the explanation of primary cells and that of the secondary cells. Now, for primary cells, basically primary cells are those cells in which the chemical reaction that occurs in them is only once. The chemical reaction that occurs in them is only once, and they become dead after a while. They become dead after a while. After you might have used them for a while, then they are going to be dead. And another point is that you cannot recharge them. You cannot recharge them. So that's another point that you need to note about the primary cells. So this cell battery are used as a source of direct current. They are used as a source of what DC currents, DC circuit power to power DC circuit rather, or power DC circuit current. That's what you use them for. So that is the main function of primary cells. So they cannot be used for a long period of time. After they might have used up, you cannot recharge them back. And examples of primary cells are the Daniel cells, the Lagrange cell, and we have mercury cell and lithium cells. These are the kind of things that are examples of what's primary cells. Also, again, for the purpose of exam, my explanation is just going to be laid on Daniel's and Lagrange cell. So let's look at the first one, which is Daniel cell. Daniel cell is very old type of cell, which was invented by a scientist known as John Frederick Daniel around 1836. And it's just like a kind of electrochemical cell. You can look at the arrangement of it based on this diagram. It contains just like two beaker or two container. The first one contains electrolyte, which is copper sulfate, while the second one contains another electrolyte, which is zinc sulfate. And we have two electrodes there. This is the first electrode, which is cathode, copper, and the second we have is what zinc. Zinc is the anode electrode that we have at the right hand side here. Then we have two wires that are connected to the two electrodes, which are joined to the voltage measuring device, which is voltmeter or most of the time the voltage measuring device that we use for this one is galvanometer. And the purpose of it is just because the size of current produced in Daniel cell, it is very small. It is very small. That's why we make use of a galvanometer that can detect very small amount of current to test or to detect the size of current produced in these Daniel cells. A point you should note here again is that for your exam, they can ask you one very important question. And that very important question they can ask you is that what is the depolarizer used for Daniel cells? What is the depolarizer used for the Daniel cell? Basically, the depolarizer used for the Daniel cell is copper 2 sulfate. It's copper 2 sulfate in case they ask you in the exam. They can ask you copper 2 sulfate is used for which type of cell, and that is Daniel cell, or they will ask you that what type of depolarizer is used uh, for Daniel cell, and that's going to be copper 2 sulfate. Now let's look at the next type of example of primary cell that we have, and that is Lake-Lange cell. For Lake-Lange cell, they are of two types. The first one we have is dry Lake-Lange cell, and the second one we have is wet Lake-Lange cell. Basically, Lake-Lange cell is just modified type of primary cell. It's modified type of what Daniel cell. So let's look at this explanation of these two one after the other. Daniel cells is just like normal battery that you have. We used to make use of the one we use to power our wall clock and so on like that. So what we have in this case, it contains a carbon rod. You can see it's black at the center like this. It's black at the center. It contains a zinc what's it called, case outside like this, and it has what we call aqueous ammonium chloride. The ammonium chloride used in this case, it is dried or in paste form. It is in paste form, solid to be precise. And between this aqueous ammonium chloride, which is in paste form, and that of the carbon rod, we have a powdered carbon and manganese dioxide there. And aside this one, we have what we call the insulator between the component that we have inside and the zinc case that we have it. Between insulated part and the zinc case that we have it. And the purpose of that insulator is just to create a kind of barrier between the positive terminal and that of the negative terminal of it. Remember, the carbon is the positive terminal and the zinc is the negative terminal. So to create a kind of barrier so that the positive and negative terminal are not going to breach, that is why we have this insulator there. Another point that you must know, a very important point you must know here is that what is the depolarizer used for Lake-Lange cell? The depolarizer used for Lake-Lange cell is manganese 2 oxide. Unlike Daniel said that we make use of copper 2 sulfate, what we make use of in this case is what? Manganese 2 oxide, which serve as depolarizer in this case. So basically, why we call a dry cell a dried one is because the aqueous ammonium chloride that we make use of in it, aqueous ammonium chloride that we make use of it is in paste form, not in liquid form. Why for this wet cell, the same thing, similar material we have in this case. However, the ammonium chloride we use in this one is in what? In liquid form. That is why we call this one a wet cell. And it contains virtually everything that we have, just like the other one, that I discovered, just like the dry cell. So the polarizer used for the wet cell is a manganese 2 oxide as well. Now let's move to that of the secondary cell or accumulator. The secondary cell or accumulator. So unlike that of primary cell that we said the primary cell is not rechargeable. For this one they are rechargeable, and the reaction that occur in this one can be what? Reversible. They are reversible. When they use up, they can still be recharged for them to stay, for the reaction to occur again and again. So example of this one are, we have what they call lead acid accumulator, we have nickel ion accumulator, and we have what they call lithium ion accumulator. Now what you need to know about this one is that secondary cell are widely used in example of place where it is make use of is what? In cars, trains, motors, electric clock, inverter, laptop, and so on like that. So basically any device that when you are using them, you recharge the battery for them for you to reuse them again. What the type of battery they are making use of is a secondary cell or accumulator. Now, this is just a common example of lead acid accumulator, car battery or inverter battery. So it contains all these components, the protective case, which is the black case that you used to see outside, or it's not necessarily black, the case they are seeing outside. And inside it, it's not that the size of the voltage, maybe 12 volts written on that battery is just 12 volts. what we have inside is that we have series of small cells inside. The small cells are inside it. The first one can be something of this nature. You can see the first one. Between we have a barrier, then we have another small cell, we have a barrier, another small cell. So if it is 12 volt that you need as an instance, if the value of this one is 2 volt, then you are going to have 2 volt connected in series inside it like that to form just this bigger one. But you will not notice them until you open it for you to know the components that will have it. And this one is called the lead acid accumulator, because the electrolyte that they make use of in this one is H2SO4, which is an acid, tetrasulfate 6 acid. That is what is used here. That is why they call it acid accumulator, and they call it lead because the electrode that they make use of in this case is what is lead oxide. That's why they refer to as what lead acid accumulator. Now, the third one we have is nickel ion accumulator. Nickel ion accumulator make use of what? Base basically. And another point that we need to make, you need to note about this one is that they are most of the time in wet form like this. And you can see the name here, ion nickel or nickel ion accumulator. That's what you have for this one. The size of voltage generated here is very, very small, but you can amplify or increase the size of the voltage that you have in primary cell or primary cells or accumulator by just connecting them in series. Like for this one is 1.2 volt. So that's why if you combine two together, you're going to have 2.4. If you add another one to it, you're going to have 3.6, 4.8, and so on like that. Depends on the size of the voltage that you are going to need to power your device. And the next one we have is what? Nickel ion accumulator. So nickel ion accumulator is the kind of a battery that we use to power our camera, to power microphone, and so on like that. That is what we call nickel ion accumulator. It could be of this type or this type. Now, one point that you need to note is that normal battery that we have, the common battery that we have, with those ones that are not rechargeable, they can look like this as well. But for this one, it is from the name you can see lithium ion there, which is rechargeable. It is written over it for you to differentiate between the two. So that doesn't mean that any battery that look like this, it is automatically a rechargeable one. You must check the write-up you have on it so that you are not going to connect or try to charge the other one. Because if you charge primary cell, it can explode, which is very, very dangerous. Now, what are the advantages of lead acid accumulator over primary cells? What are the advantages of secondary cell over primary cell in summary? The first one, they are what? They are rechargeable, meaning you can use and recharge them and use them again. So they are reusable, like I said already. They have longer lifespan than primary cell. Primary cell, once they are used up, then that's the end of it. While the other one, you can use them even a year, depends on the strength of it. By recharging, use and recharge them. Then another point is that mostly preferred for supplying higher voltage, meaning that lead acid accumulator can supply higher voltage compared to that of what? Compared to that of our primary cells. Then secondary cell can produce higher voltage compared to primary cell. So they can be recycled. Once they use up or they are not producing any current again, they can take them back to the factory and reuse them or reproduce them again by just recharging them, refill the acid that you have there, and replace the lead oxide which serves as the electrode there. And the last one, they can produce large amount of current. They can produce large amount of current, meaning large current can be drawn from it for a long time. And this one will lead me to a very important question they used to ask in WAEC. So one of the common questions they used to ask in WAEC is, number one, why is it that lead acid accumulator is preferred over primary cell for powering a car? So the main reason is that, one, the size of voltage that is produced for lead acid accumulator is very, very high. So compared to the other one, and the cars generally require high voltage for them to start. So that's why they cannot just combine ordinary series of small battery or primary cell together to power a car. So the second thing is that the size of current or voltage that can produce this one can last for a long period of time. While if you combine series of small battery or small cells together, those ones that are not rechargeable together, they can only be used for a while. So you can be driving just for a short period of time, then the car is going to stop. So this is another reason why it is being used. And the only disadvantage you can just have for lead acid accumulator is that for lead acid accumulator, they are very costly compared to that of the primary cells. Also, what is produced in this one, the kind of material we use for this one, such as lead, they are poisonous. So it is very dangerous for being handled too much when you are handling them as well. That is why these are the main things that we have regarding primary cell or comparison of primary cell with secondary cell. So thank you very much for listening. In summary, what I've talked about so far is the definition of battery, that a storage device for converting battery or cell as a storage device for converting chemical energy to electrical energy. And the second point that I mentioned to us is that we have two types of battery or cells. We have primary one, then we have the secondary one. Primary one are not rechargeable, while the secondary one are rechargeable. And we have mentioned some of the advantages of it. So for further question, you can check WAEC 2006 and 2012. So thank you for giving me your audience and for the listening to this short explanation. So for further video, don't forget to subscribe to this my video or to my